I just got into this episode, or I don't know what you want to call it, of Henry Sports Media. And today I'm going to be talking about the 10 greatest all time MLB teams. And that's their lineup, rotation, and relievers. So that's their starting nine, and then 5-man rotation, and then one relieving pitcher. And I'm just going to be looking at any time in history for these teams, and just like who would win the World Series if this was it, and who would come in second, who would come in third, and so on and so forth. And before I get this video started, I'm just gonna go back out, and I'm gonna just say thank you to Axios and this article, because this is where I got pretty much all of my understanding of what's going on. I know a lot about baseball, but I don't know all these random, not random, but very old players who were in the league a long time ago. And if it wasn't for Axios, I probably would have taken double the time to make this video, because I would have had to look so much into different players, and I would just have no idea what was the opinion on these things. And so yeah, I mean, like, they really helped make this video possible and make this video efficient to make. And I really like baseball history, so I think this is going to be a fun one. So yeah, I think I'll just go through my ranking and then go into more depth of it. So number one's the Yankees, number two's the Red Sox, then the St. Louis Cardinals, then the New York or San Francisco, depending on the era, Giants, the Detroit Tigers, the Oakland Athletics, the Cincinnati Reds, the Chicago Cubs, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and finally the Cleveland Indians. And then I got two honorable mentions, which are the Braves and the Twins. So let's get back to the beginning. And number one is the Yankees. And whereas they have probably an under-average rotation for this for these teams, not under average, but just for these teams. Whitney Ford being their ace, not a bad ace, especially for an all-time team, but not that deep. I mean, CC Sabathia as your third best pitcher. He's good. He's like borderline Hoff, but probably not gonna make it. I mean, it's just not that good. But then you've got Mo, who's the best relieving pitcher of all time. And then this lineup, which is just insane. So this is just my creation of the lineup, and this is just my opinion on who gets in there for every spot. But I've got Derek Jeter, the shortstop, and then so 1 Derek Jeter, 2 Joe DiMaggio, 3 Babe Ruth, 4 Gehrig. I think you gotta have the Ruth Gehrig 3-4. That's how they did it back then, and it's really a dominant 3-4, probably the best in history. And then Mickey Mantle coming in at 5, Alex Rodriguez 6. And 7, Don Mattingly, 8, Yogi Berra, and 9, Robinson Cano. So, I mean, it's really that top 6 where you've got, like, 6 top 30 players in the league. Maybe not Jeter, but, I mean, he's certainly a great leadoff hitter, a 3,000 hit member, just, an exceptional player who's got a ton of experience. He's been known to be a great clutch team player, and, I mean, I hate the Yankees, but he's probably my least favorite Yankee. Or my most favorite. Well, the Yankee I hate the least. Still hate him, but hate him the least. And then Joe DiMaggio, obviously, just another great Yankee. And then Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, A-Rod. All of those guys could hit 50 home runs. Ruth, the GOAT. Gehrig, top 15 player in my eyes. Mickey Mantle, top 15 player in my eyes. A-Rod, top 20 player in my eyes. I mean, the bottom 3 isn't that great for these type of standards. I mean, it's still great. Don Mattingly, incredible player. Yogi Berra, incredible player. Cano, incredible player. But, not quite on the level of those first 6 guys. But, I mean, those first 6 guys, all of them just superstars in their own rights. So, yeah, I mean, the Yankees, hate to say it, but they're by far the best squad of all time. And I mean, by far, maybe a little bit of an overstatement, because number 2, the Red Sox, they're pretty good as well. So yeah, number 2 is the Red Sox, and they also have an incredible all-time team. And for them, their offense is kind of just mediocre for these standards, but their pitching staff is just unbelievably good. So for the lineup, we got Tris Beaker, who's a career BA of over 340, so obviously a beast. Then Ted Williams, who's known as the greatest hitter in baseball. Then we got Jimmy Fox, who in my eyes is the second greatest first baseman. Then David Ortiz, who broke the Red Sox curse. Wade Boggs, a 3,000 hit member. Manny Ramirez, 500 home run member. And then Carlton Fisk, Nomar Garciaparra, and Dustin Pedroia. So that bottom three, or really that bottom two, is not. It's still exceptional, but it's not quite exceptional on these levels. But I mean, that first six again, like the Yankees, is just really dominant. You've got Speaker, terrific leadoff hitter. You got Williams, just terrific. Williams and Fox, those are two of the greatest hitters in history. And then David Ortiz, he might not put up numbers nearly as impressive as those guys, but anyone who knows baseball knows that David Ortiz is one of the best to ever do it. He played with a certain level that's just not been replicated by many. He was so clutch. He was so talented. And if you ask anyone, they're going to say Ortiz is just one of the greatest. It's pretty obvious. And then Manny Ramirez, terrific hitter. Wade Boggs, terrific contact player. And then Carlton Fisk, a lot of consistency. And, Garciaparra, Pedroia, Fisk, I mean, they're not quite on the level of those top six, but they're still really great players who really did some amazing things in their prime. I mean, Garciaparra, he had a season where he batted like 370. I mean, he was a stud when he was really on top of his game. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a great 1 through 9. It's one of the better ones on this list. But that pitching rotation is what makes this team so good in an all-time standpoint. And I mean, if it wasn't for the curse, they would have a lot of rings. But yeah, I mean, they're not quite as good as the Yankees. I don't think a lot of people do think they're as good, but that pitching rotation is what makes them have even a chance to be as good as the Yankees, because Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, Cy Young, Lefty Grove, Babe Ruth. Maybe you don't know who Lefty Grove is. Maybe you're not very familiar with Babe Ruth's pitching. But let me just tell you, even if Lefty Grove and Babe Ruth, instead of being, really, really talented pitchers, were scrubs, it would still be a great rotation. Sorry. Because you've got Pedro, who I just watched a Foolish Baseball video on him. I would definitely recommend it. It's just kind of about how good he is. Because when he was at his peak, you didn't get much better. 3-time Cy Young winner. Then you got Roger Clemens, who won 7 Cy Youngs, and obviously is one of the greatest pitchers. Okay, why do I keep on doing that? Obviously one of the greatest pitchers in history. And then Cy Young, who's the guy that these awards that I'm talking about were named after, so he's obviously got to be pretty good. And then Lefty Grove and Babe Ruth didn't play in the Cy Young era, so they couldn't have won it, but I do think that at least Lefty Grove would have gone a few. And Babe Ruth, he's got a 2.28 career ERA. And that wasn't just one season. That wasn't just one incomplete season. That was 3 or 4 full seasons of Babe Ruth being an elite pitcher before he was an elite hitter. And that was on the Red Sox. So I know you see him and you're like, oh yeah, you're just saying that, but he's really a Yankee. He is really a Yankee offensively, but he's a Red Sox in terms of pitching. He did not pitch on the Yankees. He only hit. The Yankees were like, okay, you obviously are a good hitter, and we want to use that, not pitching. But the Red Sox thought otherwise. When they had him, he was a pitcher, and they had him for a significant amount of time, enough that with the talent he had on the mound, he definitely gets to be on that spot. And then Jonathan Papelbon, not a great closer, but I mean pretty good. And it's just like the closer's not that important for this list. It's not what I'm looking at the most. For the Red Sox, I mean just a dominant rotation and a strong offense. So yeah, they come in at number 2. So then we got the St. Louis Cardinals at number 3. And it's Lou Brock as the leadoff hitter. Then Rogers Hornsby, Albert Pujols, Stan Musial, Mark McGwire, Eno Slaughter, Yadier Molina, Ken Boyer, and then Ozzie Smith coming in at 9. And then their pitching staff is Bob Gibson, Dizzy Dean, Adam Wainwright, Harry Breachin, and then Jesse Haynes. And their closer is Todd Worrell. So this team, it's definitely not on the tier that the Red Sox and Yankees are on. They just not nearly as much star power, not nearly as much talent, but still a great offense. Lou Brock, he's one of those guys who played a long time ago and really got on base at an incredibly high rate. He's definitely a talented leadoff hitter, a good guy to have at that position. And then Rogers Hornsby, a top 10 player of all time in my eyes. Not only does he have the second greatest career batting average of all time, but he had 300 career home runs. He had a season where he hit 40. It was the dead ball era, and he was still hitting dingers. So he's not just one of those guys who got on base a lot because he was in the dead ball era. He could actually hit the ball out of the park. I think that's what separates him from some of those other guys like Lou Brock, who's the leadoff hitter. And then 3 is Albert Pujols, top 30 player of all time in my eyes, just absolutely beastly. For those 10 years on the Cardinals, or 11 if you want to count the last one, people thought he was going to become the GOAT. If he had done that for 5-6 more years, he would have a GOAT case. I mean, what he was doing at the plate was absolutely legendary, and he was doing it when he was winning MVPs over really, really talented players, like Barry Bonds, for instance. I mean, I'm not sure if he won an MVP over Bonds, but he was competing for MVPs with Barry Bonds, and that's a really, really big accomplishment. So, Pujols is obviously a great player. And then 4 is Stan Musial, who was competing for MVPs against Ted Williams, and I know that for a fact. They played in a similar era, has similar game styles. He's a 400 home run hitter. He has a career batting average well over 300. He could get on base. He's one of those guys who really combine power and average, and he's one of the best hitters of all time. I think that's fairly obvious. And then Mark McGwire, 70 home run man, 583 career. I mean, this is a really great team power-wise. The 3, 4, 5 spot, Pujols, Musial, McGwire. Those are 3 guys who have hit over 400 home runs. 2 of them have hit over 600, or 2 of them have hit over 500. 1 of them over 600. That's just really, really powerful. And we know McGwire, if he had a longer career, a longer peak, he would have been up there with Pujols for the most home runs on his team. And then 6 is Eno Slaughter. And you probably never heard of him, and you probably think his name's kind of weird, but he was actually a really talented player. He's a Hall of Famer, career batting average over 300, hit like about 250 career home runs. Just a really solid, consistent player. He had like a 20-year career for the Cardinals. Just, a lifetime Cardinal who really made an impact. He's one of those guys where no crazy seasons, but just a lot of consistency and a lot of talent, and he definitely deserves to be one of the higher up batting spots on this amazing St. Louis Cardinals team. So then, the bottom 3, you're not going to see much offensive worth in Yachty, Ken Boyer, and Ozzie Smith, but 2 of those guys are Gold Glove winning incredible defensive players. Ozzie Smith, one of the greatest defensive players of all time. He's got double-digit Gold Glove wins as shortstop, and Yachty, obviously, another great defensive player at the catching position. You don't really get much better than him when it comes to defense. So, I mean, offensively at the top, you're elite. Defensively at the bottom, you're elite. And then pitching-wise, Bob Gibson, 1.12 ERA in 68. He's obviously great. Dizzy Dean, might not have heard of him, but I think he's got like a sub-3 career ERA. I mean, he was one of those guys who really, really was great in run prevention. And then Adam Wainwright, who's a current player, and in his prime, I think he's an underrated player. I mean, he was really, really talented. Now, the bottom 2 starting pitchers, and then the closer, Todd Worrell, not that great, but still, I mean, a very respectable top 3 in the pitching rotation, and then a very, very good offense. That's going to be enough to get them at the 3 spot. So then we got the San Francisco Giants, or the New York Giants, if we're talking about a long time ago. And, this is a team that definitely competes with the Cardinals for that 3 spot. And they've had a great all-time team. It's pretty obvious, with leading off Willie Mays. I'm not sure if he actually was a leadoff hitter, because he definitely had a lot of power. But, at the beginning of his career, he was stealing 40 bases. He was batting .330. I think he would have fit in for the leadoff spot. Like, especially with a power team like this, I don't think he's going to fall into a different spot. It's just not going to really work. So then Mel Ott, or Mel Oat, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, comes in at second. And he was also a really great player. I think he has 500 career home runs. Another guy kind of like Rogers Hornsby, who played in the dead ball era, yet still brought balls out of the park. He really is unique in that he could hit for average and then also hit balls out. And then Barry Bonds comes in at 3. Well, we know who Barry Bonds is. We know how good he is. I mean, the fact that they have Bonds and Mays, that's my 2 and 3 best players of all time. That's crazy. I mean, Barry Bonds, 73 home runs in a season, and even if you take out the steroid years, even if you don't want to count them, he had like 400 stolen bases and 400 home runs before that. That's really really impressive. He had some 40-40 seasons, won 3 MVPs before the big steroid part of his career. So I mean, regardless if you have him as the 70 home run guy or the 40 stolen base Gold Glove guy, he did it all, and he's really in that top tier. Just an incredible player. I don't like him. He used steroids. I just feel like that's an awful thing to do. He was already an elite player. He really didn't need to. He would have had a legacy no matter what, and I just feel like it's stupid. But that's what he did. I still think that those seasons should be thought of in his career, but he definitely deserves to not be in the Hall of Fame. I completely support him out of the Hall of Fame, regardless of what he did before he cheated. He cheated, so it doesn't erase how good he was. And I'm not saying he's not good. I'm saying that he does not deserve to get such an award because he's a cheater. And if you're a cheater, you don't deserve to make the Hall of Fame. I don't think Altuve should make the Hall of Fame. I don't think that the Astros should have a World Series flag. That's my opinion. So I feel like if you're a cheater, you don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. You don't deserve to get an award like that. You're still a great player, but you don't deserve to be thought of with that type of legacy, because the Hall of Fame is more than just, oh, you played well. It's that you played an honest game, you played a good game, and I just don't think you can say that for Barry Bonds, but he's still an elite player, regardless of that, and he comes in 3, and yeah, I mean, that top 3 is pretty incredible for an offense. And then Willie McCovey, pretty underrated Giants slugger, comes in at 4, and then we got Jeff Kent, Will Clark, George Davis, Buster Posey, who's a current player, and then Frankie Frisch. So, in terms of the offense, it's a really good top 4. Still some good players, but not that good. But then their ace, Christy Mathewson, he's one of the best pitchers of all time. I think he had like a sub-2 ERA in 3 straight seasons or something. I mean, I get that he was pitching in the dead ball era, but he was certainly one of the best of all time. I don't think there's a lot of question about that. And then Juan Marshall, Carl Hubble, Madison Bumgarner, and Tim Lincecum take out the rest of that rotation. So yeah, I mean, and then Rob Nen as their relieving pitcher, he's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, you might not know who Juan Marshall is, you might not know who Carl Hubble is, but you can kind of get an idea of their talent level by seeing that Madison Bumgarner and Tim Lincecum, a 2-time Cy Young winner, Madison Bumgarner, one of the clutchest pitchers of all time, those guys are below them. So that means that this Giants rotation is not only great at the top, but also great at the bottom. Just a really good all-around team, and they come in at number 4. So then we've got the Detroit Tigers coming in at 5, and this kind of rounds up the first half of this ranking. And they've got Ty Cobb, one of my favorite players of all time, coming in at the leadoff spot, and then Harry Hellman, Miguel Cabrera, Hank Greenberg, Al Kaline, Charlie Gehringer, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, and Bill Freehan. So this Detroit team, a lot of old players, and you might not know who half these guys are, and you might think, okay, this is a bad team, but Ty Cobb, hopefully you know who he is. He's the greatest leadoff hitter in history, and he stole like 800 career bases. He has a 366 career batting average. That's the greatest batting average career for all time. Obviously just an incredible player. And then Miguel Cabrera and Hank Greenberg, that's a really good 3-4. Sorry, I skipped Harry Hellman. He's just another good old player who could really do stuff. I think he's got an over 300 career batting average. And then, yeah, Cabrera, he's a modern player, Triple Crown winner, 2-time MVP, obviously a slugger. And then Hank Greenberg, in my opinion, the 4th greatest first baseman of all time. I think he hit 50 home runs one season, 300 career batting average. Just another old player who had power and average and really deserves to be thought of as a high level. And then Al Kaline, Charlie Gehringer, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, Bill Freehan. Kind of a top-heavy lineup, but still really talented. And then for pitching staff, they've got Hal Newhouser, Mickey Lolich, Justin Verlander, Tommy Bridges, and Dizzy Trout. And then the closer being John Hiller, sorry. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, this team doesn't look that good. I mean, it looks great, but it doesn't look that good compared to some. But I think that some of these pitchers, some of these hitters, you just might not have heard of, but they are really good. And if you look at any ranking like this, they're going to put Detroit in the top 5, almost certainly. They just, they won a lot, and even though they suck now, they should be recognized as one of the better MLB franchises of all time. Then we got the Oakland Athletics coming at 6, and they've got another terrific leadoff hitter in Ricky Henderson. And after that, it's Eddie Collins, Jimmy Fox, Reggie Jackson, Mark McGwire, Al Simmons, Mickey Cochrane, Bert Campaneris, and then Sal Bando. Their pitching staff is Lefty Grove, Eddie Plank, Rube Waddle, Chief Bender, Barry Zito, and then their closer is Dennis Eckersley. So this is a really, really good team, and I kind of went back and forth with them and the Tigers for the 5 spot. The Athletics, obviously a great all-time team, and if we go into this, Ricky Henderson, the greatest base stealer of all time. He's got the most runs and steals of all time. And on top of that, he actually had a ton of discipline, and that's not something you see a lot with leadoff hitters, but he could get on base at a high level. He's a 2,000 walk player. His OBPs were crazy, and the thing is, he's getting walked and singling all the time, and when he does that, he steals. So, if he has a 400 OBP, half of those times he's going to get to second base, and that's kind of the equivalent of a double, right? So that means kind of 4/10 of the time he doubles. That's kind of what it is. And obviously that's incredible. I mean, if you want a leadoff hitter, he's kind of one of the best that you can get because he will get on base and he will fly on the base pass. So obviously a great player. And then Eddie Collins, the second baseman, one of the greatest second basemen of all time. 300 career batting average. Just a really, really talented second baseman. And then Jimmy Fox. So we saw him on the Red Sox, and we'll see him again on the A's. He probably played slightly better on the A's. Won an MVP there. He's obviously a great hitter, one of the greatest to ever do it. And then Reggie Jackson, the strikeout king, but also a great power hitter and a really clutch guy. I mean, I get that Jackson's stats don't jump off the page. He never was hitting that many home runs. He never was batting for that good batting averages, but he was a clutch player. He had significant pop. He did it over a long period of time. And he deserves to be the cleanup hitter on this great team. And then number 5 is Mark McGwire. And although his 70 home run season didn't come here, he hit 50 in Oakland. He did a lot of stuff in Oakland. So, I mean, I get that his most powerful seasons came in St. Louis, but he was still a really, really good power hitter over in Oakland. And then Al Simmons, Mickey Cochrane, and Bert Campaneris, and then Sal Bando wrap up this lineup. And I'd like to point out that Mickey Cochrane was a catcher, and he had a 320 career batting average. So just think about that. And then as a closer, they have Dennis Eckersley, and I get that he started, but he was a closer and relieving pitcher in Oakland, and he was one of the best to do that. Dennis, obviously a stud. He won an MVP as a relieving pitcher, and if you know baseball, you know Dennis Eckersley, and you know he's good, and you know having him as your closer really makes a difference. And then Lefty Grove as their ace, and then Eddie Plank, Rube Waddle, Chief Bender, and Barry Zito. So, yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good team. That's a really strong offense. It's a really, really good relieving pitcher and an okay pitching rotation. But, they didn't win that many games as a franchise, and I know that's not exactly what I'm looking at, but I think it still needs to be taken into consideration. So then 7 is the Cincinnati Reds, as their lineup is Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench, Frank Robinson, George Foster, Joey Votto, Ted Kluszewski, Tony Perez, and Barry Larkin. And then their closer is Aroldis Chapman, the current player. And then, and Votto is also a current player. And then the rotation is Bucky Walters, Noodles Hahn, Dolph Lukey, Epa Rixey, and Jim Maloney. Not a great rotation. A lot of those guys I never heard of before doing the research for this video. But they've got a pretty good closer in Aroldis Chapman, and then a great offense. Pete Rose, he's the hit king, definitely a great leadoff hitter. Joe Morgan, the greatest second baseman of all time. He was a base stealer, kind of like Ricky Henderson. He could get on base by getting walked, and then he would always steal. So he was a really valuable player. And then Johnny Bench, in my opinion, the greatest catcher of all time. 11-time Gold Glove. He hit 40 home runs as a catcher. Really, really talented player. And then Frank Robinson, I think he had 583 career home runs. Really, really powerful player coming in at the cleanup spot. And then George Foster, Joey Votto, really great discipline man in Joey Votto. And then Ted Klosweski, Tony Perez, Barry Larkin. You know, that offense is really, really good at the top, and it falls out a little bit, and that's why this team doesn't get much higher, because even though they had some really, really good players at the top, you know, you see a lot of inconsistencies at other places like the rotation and the bottom of their lineup. But let me just point something out that's quite funny. Looking at this great team, maybe the three best players that you see as the top three spots in the lineup, they all played in the same era in the 70s, and that's how good that Cincinnati Red 1970s dynasty was. Oh, they were good. Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, also Ken Griffey Sr. I mean, that was a dynasty. That was really one of the best franchises we've seen in the MLB. And you can see that because on the all-time team, maybe the three best players are all from there. So then the Chicago Cubs come in at number 8, and their lineup is Cap Anson, Billy Williams, Hack Wilson, Sammy Sosa, Ernie Banks, Ryan Sandberg, Ron Santo, Anthony Rizzo, and then Gabby Hartnett. Their rotation is Fergie Jenkins, Mordecai Three Finger Brown, Pete Alexander, Hippo Vaughn, and Rick Russell. And then their closer is Bruce Sutter. So yeah, I mean, the Cubs, another pretty good team. You know, I feel like they're a little bit worse than all the teams we've seen yet, and that's why I have them behind all the teams we've seen yet. But, you know, still a really, really talented team. And you see Cap Anson leading things off. He was 300 career batting average guy. Billy Williams, Hack Wilson, Sammy Sosa, Ernie Banks, all really talented players. I mean, Wilson, Sosa, and Banks all had, like, multiple 40 home run seasons. Really powerful guys. Ryan Sandberg was an MVP. Ron Santo was an MVP. Rizzo, obviously consistent player. And, you know, this team is probably one of the most consistent. You know, if you look at their pitching staff, Grover P. Alexander, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, he's only number 3. And that's because most of his good seasons didn't come in Chicago. But he still was an elite pitcher in Chicago, and that just shows how good this pitching rotation is. Bruce Sutter, a pretty good closer. And you can kind of see how good this team really is because there's not a lot of inconsistencies. I mean, Anthony Rizzo, he's a really consistent, great player, and he's at the bottom of this lineup, and that means something. That means that this lineup is really, really well-rounded. And so is the rotation. So, I mean, yeah, Chicago doesn't have nearly as much star power as the teams we've seen in the past, but every single player in this lineup is going to give you a lot of value, and that's why I have them in this top 10. So 9 is the Los Angeles Dodgers, and this team, Dodgers, you know, not necessarily that many star players, but they won a lot, and if you look into this with a more deep look, you see how good this is. So Jackie Robinson leads things off, then Pee Wee Reese, Duke Snider, Roy Campanella, Mike Piazza, Steve Garvey, Zach Wheat, Carl Frio, Ron Key, and then the rotation is Sandy Koufax, Clayton Kershaw, Dazzy Vance, Don Drysdale, and Don Sutton. And then their closer, I couldn't decide, so I just put both Kenley Jansen and Eric Gagne. So yeah, this lineup is maybe one of the worst on this video. I mean, Jackie Robinson, obviously a great player, broke the color barrier, could steal 30 bases, bat 300. Pee Wee Reese, a really consistent player. Duke Snider, MVP. Roy Campanella, MVP. Mike Piazza, one of the greatest catchers of all time. You know, Steve Garvey, Zach Wheat, Carl Frio, and Ron Kay. That's a pretty good bottom of your lineup. And then this pitching rotation is dominant. Koufax and Kershaw at the top. Everyone else kind of falls below. But, I mean, Sandy and Kershaw, they've both had multiple sub-2 ERA seasons. Both just elite pitchers. And then Kenley Jansen and Eric Gagne, that's a really, really good closing staff because Eric Gagne was a stud for LA and so was Kenley. I just couldn't decide who was better, so I just put them both. And, I mean, if you look at this team, there's just, you know, two aces, 2 great closers, 2 great catchers in Piazza and Campanella. I just have Piazza as the DH. I mean, offensively, they're not great, but their pitching staff is one of the best on this list, and that's what gets them on the list. And then 10 is the Cleveland Indians. That's going to round out this ranking. And their leadoff hitter is Kenny Lofton, followed by Joe Jackson, who's Shoeless Joe, if you didn't recognize that, Tris Speaker, Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez, Napla Joey, Al Rosen, Lou Baradu, and Victor Martinez. Their rotation is Bob Feller, Addie Joss, Stan Klevetsky, CC Sabathia, and Earl Wynn. with their closer being Jose Mesa. So yeah, the Indians, still a really, really, really good all-time team, and still a really impressive one. And if you just looked at this and you didn't know anything about baseball, but you knew these players, you'd probably expect it to be higher, because Kenny Lofton, great base stealer. Shoeless Joe, third highest batting average of all time for a career. Tris Beaker, another 340-plus BA guy. Jim Thome, 600 career home runs. Manny Ramirez, 500 career home runs. Napoli Joey, another great BA man. I mean, this top six is one of the better top six lineups we've had, because, I mean, you've got Tris, Joe Jackson, Kenny Lofton, Napoli Joey. That's great from, like, the contact speed side of things. And then Jim Thome and Manny Ramirez as your 4-5. That's certainly very powerful. And then, but, I mean, the reason why they're not very high on this is because 7, 8, 9 are pretty bad, and the rotation and closer aren't very good. I mean, yeah, if they had a better rotation and closer, I think they could be in the top 5. It's just, they lacked a lot in that. And then honorable mentions are the Braves and the Twins. So what I said for those teams is that the Braves had a great pitching staff, and then obviously Chipper Jones and Eddie Matthews, two of the best third basemen of all time, along with Hank Aaron, who's obviously a great player. And may I just say, like, rest in peace, this guy is a legend. He died recently, I think at the age of 86. And then the Twins, kind of had to include them. They're my team. And I say, you know, the reason why is because they had maybe the best pitcher of all time, Walter Johnson, and then Rod Carew, who got 3,000 hits. They just didn't have a lot of depth, you know. They'd be one of these teams who just had some really bad players in their lineup who just, you know, and that's just not what you want to see on these lists. They just didn't have enough depth so that every player was a star, and that's kind of what you need to be on this list. But yeah, they came pretty close. So yeah, that's my best all-time teams. I've been making a few MLB history videos. I'm probably going to be veering away from that in the next few videos, doing more current stuff, just because I think that these videos haven't done nearly as well, and they just don't have a lot of importance. But yeah, I mean, if you enjoy this, if you want to see more of this, I can certainly make more of this videos. These are something that I'm very interested in. So yeah, I mean, like and subscribe, and then I will make more of these videos if you enjoy this type of content. But I'm probably going to be moving more to, like, sports video game showing, and then also just, you know, updates, because we've got the NBA and the MLB going on right now, and that's really exciting for me because those are probably my two favorite sports to follow. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on that notifications bell, because I'm going to be making tons of content until there's really no reason to. So yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, that's it. I can't.